Good morning, everyone, and welcome to PIER Economics Seminar today. My name is Don. I will be your moderator for today's presentation. It is our honor to welcome Professor Peter Cramton, Professor of Economics Emeritus at the University of Maryland and an International Research Fellow at the Max Planck Institute for research on collective goods. Thank you. Professor Cramton is a leading expert in auction theory, with his research spanning across design of the auction-based markets, as the electricity market, radio spectrum to healthcare and financial products. Beyond academia, Professor Cramton has played a leading role in putting theory into practice. He co-invented the spectrum auction designs used in Canada, Australia, and several European countries. And he has also advised on the carbon auction designs, including the first greenhouse gas auction in the UK. So with his extensive experience in both theory and practice, today Professor Cramton will be talking about market design in practice. So, and do you prefer having an audience?
Anytime. So you can just scream out, raise your hand, whatever you want to do is absolutely fine.
All right.
And then if you feel like I'm on a roll and you just want to wait and hold your question till to the end, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do. Good.
All right then. Well, without further ado, floor is yours, Professor.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I love coming to Bangkok and seeing my friends and enjoying the hospitality. Oh, okay, good. Thank you. And you have a beautiful here. I love the bridge and seeing the river. So today I am going to talk about practice. I'm also going to talk about theory, and the nice thing about doing work on auctions and market design is there's zero distance between theory and practice. Normally, academics, when you work on theory, remotely close to reality. You're off in outer space, and maybe some 100 years from now, what you do will be used in practice. But in auctions and market design, we are implementing the whole point of design. Many of you, in fact, all of you, I'm sure, are familiar with mechanism design. So mechanism design is this wonderful theory that explains the possibilities of what can be done, recognizing incentive constraints, the fact that people will act in their self-interest, which we've proven for hundreds of thousands of years. There certainly is some behavioral biases where the people actually do things that aren't interest, but they're trying to act in their interest. They just are screwing up. And so the behavioralists try to help them out. And unless they're in marketing, and then they try to exploit the behavioral biases for their self-interest. So anyway, mechanism design is an absolutely wonderful theory. The thing that's so wonderful about it is how incredibly simple it is. You'll remember Pearson's optimal auction paper that appeared in Math in 1979. It's like that is something a grade schooler could learn, right? It's just the absolute simplest calculus in the world. In fact, that's, I think, why it got placed in Math of OR, because it was so simple. It was probably rejected as being, oh, this is too easy. But I don't know, somehow Math of OR, I don't know, maybe he put in an integral sign or something. They got excited. But the beauty of mechanism design is that it is so easy. You can use simple mathematics to understand the possibilities. Still, it is theory. The goal is to produce theory, to understand incentives. Market design, by contrast, as created by Al Roth, others at Stanford, like Paul Milgram and Bob Wilson, is instead to have a big impact. So it's basically taking theory, good experiment, good anything, an interdisciplinary approach, and solving practical problems. And Al Roth's famous paper is basically saying that. He stood up at one of the World Congresses and said, hey, we got an engineering problem. Economics is going to be more useful if we think of it as an engineering problem. We've got this problem we need to solve, and let's solve it. using the tools that we know. You know, we're experts in math and all these other things, maybe experiments or what have you, to how people actually behave. So let's put it to use. That was Al Roth's idea. Fantastic. You know, and he the first Nobel Prize of the for basically expressing that idea and carrying it out in his work, which was very much interdisciplinary and grounded on theory and experiment. So scientific method, which is recommended. It's really popular nowadays in the United States, but we do recommend it. So that's what market design is, and I love it. It is the best job in the world to be a market designer, because you get to have such all you're doing is pointing out very simple ideas. So my talk today is going to be so elementary that you'll be able to go home, those of you that have children, go home and explain it to your children, as long as they're age 6 or more, and basically explain the whole thing to them. And they will understand it, I guarantee it. Now, the problem is experts and special interests. So, and the two coincide. So as you know, in every sector, in every country, there's special interests that are seeking to make as much money as they can. Good for them. Do that is by basically misrepresenting. They say things that sound good in order to trigger the reaction that they want. And the misrepresentation is intended to deceive, okay, which is the definition of lie. And it's also intended to make money, which makes the definition of fraud, right? Misrepresentation with the intent to deceive in order to make money. That's how in English, I don't know how you define fraud in Thai, but that's how we define it in English. So basically, that is what folks are engaged in, including the President of the United States. When you read Ukraine started the war, that is misrepresentation intended to deceive in order to make money. It is fraud. It is disgusting. And I didn't vote for this guy. And I don't think there's any academic in the United States who voted for this guy. And I hope he's not listening. But but if he is, the guy is a genius. You know, it's just like he's extremely, I don't know whether it's just pathological and he can't control himself, but he is just so good at keeps him in the headlines. And remember, the headlines, you know, the headline on Fox News is Trump said Ukraine started the war. Zelensky disagrees. It takes two to have a war, so let's give Putin a break. Okay, that's the headline in Fox News. And the line in the New York Times, by contrast, is Trump falsely claims blah, 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 blah. You know, they're trying to disrupt the myth and publish a truthful article. I'm not saying that Times always publishes truthful articles, nor does news always publish lies, but there's the probabilities of those two things are different for those two organizations. Let's put it. And we are in a world today where we thought when the internet first started, this is fantastic. Now truth will be, we have access to information and knowledge. And so truth will prevail and the arc of the universe will bend towards efficient markets. But the reality is just the opposite. It's actually, we've never been at a point where there is more misinformation, where there are more myths that are propelled to the public or just blatant lies. And every sector in every country, you see the what happens when you let the special interests dictate the policy. So for example, let's take something that you know very well, money settlement. So how do we do settlement in the United States? We have our clearinghouse. Now, our clearinghouse is a national monopoly, and it takes 3 days to process a paper check. It takes 3 days to process an electronic check. It is disgusting, pitiful, and extremely embarrassing. As you know, here in Thailand, you can have something like prompt, where it takes 5 milliseconds to process a transaction with zero friction. So so why do we do it this way? Is it because people in the US are stupid and they don't understand that there's computers and electronics and you don't need paper checks? No, it's not. It's because the status quo is perpetuated by the special interest. Stigler made this point very clearly in his Rand or Bell Journal of Economics paper in 71 or something like that, where he said that by and large, regulations are written and enforced by the regulators for the benefit of those being regulated. That's regulatory capture. Regulatory capture is alive and well in every sector, in every country. It's just a question of how extreme it is. And that's why, as a market designer, I can stand up and I don't have to be incredibly clever and know Ito calculus and all this fantastic stuff, because where I can have the greatest impact is to explain to people what the first best is. I just tell them, okay, what do you need for economic efficiency? Let's make the pie as big as possible. Okay, what's the basic properties of efficient market? And I describe that. And what do we need? We need information. We need a friction-free trading platform, and then we have perfect competition. And it's that simple. So now all I do, I've worked for 20 years on climate policy and cap and trade programs and carbon pricing programs. I've written a book, Global Carbon Pricing, published by MIT Press, that has where I was the editor, but it has contributors from 5 Nobel laureates. When I give climate talks now, I just have a single slide: price carbon, and that's it. And I talk for an hour about explaining, the spelling and everything else in those 2 words. So, am I a genius to think? It never occurred to anybody that when you have an externality, that if you price it, that you get an efficient outcome? No, that's Peugeot, right? When was Peugeot? In the 1870s? Okay, the other big thing that I do is, what's the first best? Well, price equals marginal social cost equals marginal social value in a competitive market. So all you have to do is establish, in any market, in any sector, in any country, an environment that is competitive, have market rules that allow efficient and transparent trade, and then you achieve the first best, and you have, because you can see the prices, they're transparent, and you can evaluate, is it the case that price equals marginal social cost equals marginal social value? If your answer is yes, you've achieved the first best. That is the brilliant insight, not of some super scientist in the 2024, but of Adam Smith, right? That's the first welfare theorem of economics. So it's, this stuff could not be easier. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about. And in particular, I'm going to describe the trading technology that enables this beautiful world, the first best. Now, the special interest will step up and say, Peter, you're full of crap, because we already know that we're in the 14th best. And we know that there, thousands of theorists have written papers showing that if you move towards the first best from the 14th best, you can make the world worse off. Well, and you know what I think about that. That is bullshit. Sorry. Because yes, the theorists are really good at coming up with these tricky edge cases, special cases where something like that's true. But the reality is 99.9% of the time, if you move towards the first best, welfare will improve. So that's my message. And my mission for the next years of my life are basically going to be, so I probably have 3 decades left where I'm going to be screaming and shouting, let's have efficient and transparent markets, period. So the reason I got so excited about this was, quite frankly, I got kind of exhausted by the climate change stuff, because it's like, okay, that's hopeless. It's too complicated for people. They can't figure it out. So, but at the same time, I've been working in electricity markets for decades. And so I see the amazing results we have in the US electricity market. It's in the restructured markets. Not all the US is restructured, only about 2/3. But in the restructured electricity markets, there's 6 or 7 system operators, I can't remember which, each with distinct rules, but they all have the same mission. They all have the same basic structure, and they all are unbelievably efficient relative to any other market. What's so remarkable about this is electricity is by far the most complicated market imaginable. So, and if you're in some different industry, you'll disagree with that, but think about it. Electricity, we've got, in any of these US markets, we've got tens of thousands of wholesale market participants. We've got thousands of network constraints. We have tens of thousands of non-convex constraints that have to be modeled and represented and solved for optimality. We have a single instrument that we can use to balance supply and demand in every second of every hour of every day. And if we don't do that, the lights go out. That single instrument is price. Price is the only instrument the system operator has to balance supply and demand. Now, is it easy because supply and demand doesn't move around, or it moves around in predictable ways? Absolutely not. There's huge shocks. The weather is an unbelievable shock. A cloud going by can have a big impact when you've got a lot of solar. The wind can stop. The generators can fail. So you have these big units, a 2 gigawatt nuclear unit, a 1 gigawatt combined cycle unit, that can just decide it doesn't want to work anymore. Or it's supposed to start up and it doesn't start. So you get these huge shocks in supply and demand all the time in electricity markets. And we've got this single instrument. And so as a result, that instrument is really utilized. The price of electricity in the United States, all these markets, varies. In Texas, it varied from -$200 to +$9,000. And you could have a swing from -$200 to +$9,000 over a period of hours. Name one financial product for which that's the case. What happens if Google stock shifts by 2 orders of magnitude? Right? Yeah, I mean, you've got circuit breakers that if anything changes by 10% in a 2-hour period, market shuts down, right? Or something like that. We have some rule. I can't remember the exact rule, but it's basically if the price changes quickly over a short period of time, we stop trading. We just shut off trading because we don't actually need to trade that much. It's perfectly fine if there's no trade. It's no big deal. We'll trade tomorrow. Electricity doesn't work that way. Electricity, we have to balance supply and demand every single second or the lights go out. And when the lights go out, people die. Hundreds of people die. In Texas, Winter Storm Uri in February 2021, I was the one of the independent directors. I was in charge of market design. At the time, for 5.5 years before Winter Storm Uri, we had a massive 30 gigawatt swing in supply and demand because of the cold snap, the extreme cold snap, which is something that hadn't been seen for 50 years. And the power went out for 3 days for 25% of the Texans. 243 people died. The cost was $110 billion or more. So that's what happens when you lose electricity. And you always lose it at the worst moment, right? So they lost their electricity during this cold snap when it was way below freezing. The Texans have no clue about what freezing means. They're like people in Bangkok, have no clue. And so, you know, their pipes froze. And then when it warmed up, all their pipes burst and they had huge flooding. So, and even the CEO of ERCOT, this operator, had this happen. So my point is, this is a tough market. It's not easy. They have, in Texas, the system operator had 3,400 servers, has 3,400 servers doing computation. There's a lot of redundancy. So they've got multiple physical sites in different parts of Texas, so that if one goes out, the other one will run. They all have backup generators, you know, 3 times over. They've got batteries, they've got diesel, they've got everything. We paid $5 million a year to have a team of people ready to bring in food, table, beds, blankets, everything to the command center. That's how, you know, critical this stuff is. Every single year we practice blackout, so and black start. So, you know, this is not, you know, people in finance would say, oh, our financial markets are much more complicated than that. Really? Give me a break. That's my that's one of our. So the interesting thing is, so, you know, the natural way to implement things would be, let's do the easy markets first. Let's start with finance, and then let's do communications. That's another easy one because communications is storable, just like money is storable. I'm sure you store some somewhere. I'd like to know where, but and then we could do transportation. That's easier. That's just 1 million people moving around Bangkok, or 10 million people. And then we could do electricity last because that's the hardest. Okay, but how's it going to go in practice? I'm going to start with electricity, the absolute hardest. And the reason is the same reason that the EU has IBAN and the United States has God knows what. The reason is that Europe had a real big problem with 27 different countries, 27 different currencies. How could they have an economy if they couldn't have an easy way to move money around among the people in the had to solve it? You know, 27 different languages, currencies, everything. They had to solve that problem, and they did, because it's easily solvable, as you know, here in Thailand. In the United States, we don't have to solve that problem. There's only US dollars, so we could have like the world's worst system where a settlement company takes 10% for every dollar that moves, you know, and that'd be totally workable. There'd just be a 10% wealth transfer to whoever this guy is. So that's why, yeah. So my point is, that's why electricity is going to be the first to implement. The second to implement is actually going to be communications. And Ken here, Ken Fields, he works for a communication company, Rabata, and so he knows all about this and how difficult it is to get good ideas implemented in communications. How do we manage congestion in a communications network? And the answer is we don't. We drop calls, reduce the quality of your connection. We, experience what we had here. That's what we do. And everybody's like, it's not that bad, just buffer. And, it's like, oh, big deal. You don't have quad HD for this stupid movie. It's all garbage anyway. So you might not feel that way when you have urgent call that you need to make, or you need, my communication here was pretty important. And I was delaying a lot of people. And you guys were with, and so I wanted to, have like urgent message privileges and have quick delivery and robust delivery. The first delivery failed, right? We tried and it failed. The second time it actually worked. But that is, it did like 19 gigabytes of the 20 gigabyte file, and then it decided, oh, I'm tired, and failed. So you can see that communication is not exactly at the state of the art, but we can make it state of the art. And Tuesday, I spent all day talking to your very fine NBTC agency, the staff and the commissioners, about the path forward in communications and how they can deal with their very serious challenge right now. As you know, mobile broadband is a duopoly here, a symmetric duopoly. There is nothing worse than a symmetric duopoly in terms of competition. It's much worse than monopoly, because monopoly, you at least know what you got. You know it's a monopoly and you can regulate it like monopoly. Duopoly, the guys can pretend that it's competitive. There's even a paper in the Bell or the Rand Journal, I can't remember when the name changed, by Larry Ozabel and Ray Denneker, which is one is almost enough for monopoly, that the duopolists can actually tie themselves to the mast and commit to doing things that yield monopoly profits much more effectively than monopolists. You'll remember Ronald Cohen's famous paper, I think in 71, which presented the Coase conjecture. And the Coase conjecture is basically like, if you're a monopolist, you're screwed. If you can't commit, you're gonna sell at the monopoly price, and then that part of demand is going to go away, and then you're going to lower your price, and you're going to keep doing that. But then the smart guys recognize that you can't commit, and so they're just going to wait till the price is low. And so the monopolist is forced, without commitment, to sell at marginal cost. But actually, a duopolist doesn't have this problem, because they can do have a repeated game reciprocity arrangement that supports monopoly. They have a vehicle to do the commitment. So it's really fascinating that. Can I have a glass of water, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really amazing that you have this predicament, but NBTC has a solution. And today I'm going to explain the solution. And it's the solution in communications. It's the solution in electricity. It's the solution in transportation, in compute resources, in everything. So it's completely general, completely flexible, and it's based upon two principles. One is Adam Smith, that efficient and transparent markets support economic efficiency that is maximized total welfare, as long as the potential market failures are addressed. And I'm going to address all of the market failures. The market failures, as you know, we were just talking about one of them, market power. So I'll explain how that's addressed. It can be addressed. Incomplete markets. So we know that because of the trading technologies that are used today, there's limited liquidity. And the response of traders to limited liquidity is to concentrate all trade in one product that is the most liquid. So for example, if you're an energy trader in Great Britain, what you do, you're interested in Great Britain forward electricity to hedge your risk, and trade forward Great Britain because isn't as liquid. Germany's got a totally screwed up market, but they're market. And the forward price is more robust. It's highly correlated with the Great Britain price. And so that's the one that the traders use to hedge Great Britain price fluctuations, which is really quite interesting. And we see that in every commodity. So in electricity in Texas, it's the hub price. In gas, it's the, what's the hub in the gas? Henry Hub, sorry. Losing my mind for a second there. Yeah, Henry Hub. So all these things in finance, where does price formation happen in financial markets? Does it happen in Bangkok? Probably not. You're not big enough. I'm huge, and there might be some special things for which you are, like Bangkok companies. But you know, where's the price formation for Google and Apple? That price formation, you might think, oh, it's in New York, of course. That's where the exchanges are, in New York. But you'd be wrong. The price formation takes place in Chicago. Why does it take place in Chicago? Because of the trading technology. CME has a monopoly in the forward index for Google, or near monopoly. Well, they have a monopoly in that product. It's you know, they own that product. So, and there's certainly competitors that have competing products, but it's not the CME forward. So essentially, when we trade continuously, it always goes to the most liquid, wherever that might be. And it varies from commodity to commodity, but it is. I'm actually fine. I'm not gonna die on you. A warm tea would be wonderful with lemon. Yeah, that's what I need. Lemon. Yeah. Good. Yeah, I was talking for 8 hours on Tuesday, and then the plane flight, you know, over here. So it's like a lot of dry air. Yeah. So I'm fine. But yeah. Good. So the big problem in finance, which is dear to your hearts, I'm sure, is the continuous trading technology. And that forces all the market participants to engage, and I mean wholesale market participants. I'm not talking about day traders, but all the wholesale participants in finance spend a lot of money on arms race tools. So speed tools, which are basically co-location at the exchanges, at every exchange, and low latency data feeds. And in fact, all the exchanges make most of their money selling those arms to they're the arms dealers of the world in this high frequency trader race. And Eric Budish and I wrote a paper which on this that came out in QJE in 2015 that you've probably read, but if you haven't, it's worth a read. It's actually makes a very good point, which is all this stuff is complete nonsense. The reason you have this issue is there's a prize for the guy that's the fastest. You got this order book that's sitting there. You process orders as they come in. And so whenever there's in the world, even when this change is observed simultaneously by everyone, there's going to be somebody that's the fastest that runs in and picks off all the stale quotes. That's the prize that they're all chasing. And every company, every trader, unless you're dealing with a moron, in which case that guy's going to go belly up pretty soon, is using these tools to be able to compete in this arms race. Now, it's competitive, and so these guys are stealing pennies, but the pennies add up to, in the United States, to about 10 billion a year. It's significant money. And it's all pointless. You know, and the finance guys will point out, well, oh, the market still, it's very efficient. And yeah, it's true. They're, you know, the amount traded is orders of magnitude more than $10 billion. But, you know, why waste that the $10 billion is complete waste because you don't need it. You can just do auctions and then have price be the priority rather than time. Then you get efficient market outcomes. Okay, there's no incentive to front run. There's no incentive to, which is illegal, but happens every nanosecond because the regulator can't see it because their feed is 2 orders of magnitude slower than the state of the art. Always. I mean, it just always goes that way. The regulators are slower to adopt the latest technologies. So why don't we fix the problem? Well, Eric and I go to the CFTC and the SEC and point this out, and the high frequency traders raise their hand and say, Peter, that's our $10 billion. And I say, I know, but it's just waste. You know, I'm talking to the regulator now. I know they're going to complain about it. It's just waste. But then the high frequency traders say, well, look, regulator, if you change, remember the first rule of regulation is first do no harm. So, you know, this is pretty scary stuff they're talking about. No, this like, and then, you know, we're supply and demand cross and you determine a price. You know, how could you possibly be able to do that? It sounds really complicated. So anyway, they put the fear of God in them and they don't change. And that's the way it is. Thank you. So, you know, that's my life. So I used to, when I was younger and I first came to Washington, D.C., I would, you know, I thought I was going to have a heart attack because my blood pressure went sky high. You know, now I'm totally, I'm like, yeah, I know you're talking your book and that's great. You know, go for it. I don't need to, it's complete bullshit. And so, you know, tell it to the regulator, not to me. You're not going to convince me that you're doing this great good thing, stealing $10 billion. So that's so now I've mellowed out a little bit, not too much though. So the so the technology is very powerful. I know I'm, you know, I only how many I think I've got like 56 slides and I'm still slide 1, but we will. Sorry. Okay. Go to slide 2. I'm over here. There. Oh, and I don't know what happened. Okay, we're back in business. Good. Can somebody else advance the slides? Because I have to stand over here, apparently. Yeah, just move that anywhere you want. No problem. Okay, so I said this was simple. So here, this is the key slide of the day. What happens in electricity markets is as in any sector, the legislature passes a law enabling some administrative agency, non-government organization to market rules and conduct the market. So that's what happens to electricity. So the legislature, Texas, passed a law saying, okay, the Public Utility Commission, the agency, the authority create a operator, an independent system operator, to conduct the market. And the mission of the independent system operator will be to provide reliable electricity at least cost to the consumers of Texas. Wow, that's a pretty nice piece of legislation. Because what that does is it establishes an organization, this independent system operator, that's got this incredibly simple mission, and it's not ambiguous whatsoever. Because I said reliable electricity at least cost. So if you are an economist or an engineer, you know what that means. It means the lights have to stay on, and at least cost is really important because it means that the market must be efficient. Only an efficient market can deliver a product at least cost. And so in fact, ERCOT, the system operator in Texas, has exactly that mission. And I translate it into economic terms: maximize social welfare subject to physical and network and resource constraints. That is the physical reality of the world. And the market rules mathematically encode that operation. We have 3,400 servers performing that calculation because it's very complicated because of all the non-convex variables and constraints. And so we have, so it takes, a lot of time and effort to solve, but we're really good at it. Guys are really good at it, and the computers are unbelievably fast, and so we can do it. So that's how electricity works in Texas. Now, how the federal government defined the electricity market was a little bit different. They said, we grant the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, your ERC, Energy Regulatory Commission, with the obligation to regulate electrical, the electricity market, or everything was monopoly utilities at the time of this. So it was essentially to regulate the monopoly utility to charge just and reasonable rates. That's the language, just and reasonable rates. Lawyers love that language because what does it mean? It means whatever a judge says is just and reasonable, period. And so when looking at this quadratic, this actually is a plot of total welfare. So imagine we could represent total welfare with a quadratic. And in fact, we can. If market participants express preferences as piecewise linear net demand curves, that is, the only thing we're requiring is monotonicity of the demand curve. That's all. Or the negative supply curve, which is a demand curve. Just monotonicity. The demand curve doesn't slope upward. That's the only thing we're ruling out. And believe me, the demand curves do not slope upward. The theorists might write wonderful papers about upward sloping demand curves, and maybe there is some product for which that's true at some instant in time, but demand curves slope downward. So it's not a big imposition. They can anything with that structure, any continuous function. Okay, which is pretty rich in, I didn't say how many products. We can have millions of products. So it can be in million dimensional space. And locally, it's a quadratic. Okay, so all I have to do is solve a quadratic locally. And we are really good at doing that. There's two types of problems in the world. In the 40s, well, actually right up until the 80s, we thought there were two types of problems in the world: linear and nonlinear. Linear were easy, nonlinear were hard. And then in the late 80s, we learned about interior point methods and found out that, oh no, it's actually convex problems are easy, non-convex problems are hard. And so anything that's convex, we can solve easily. It doesn't matter what the size is. Anything that's non-convex, we may have trouble. We may be able to solve it, but we may have trouble if the problem gets big. So anyway, we're going to require in our trading technology that people express piecewise linear net demand curves, which is a huge generalization over the step functions that they're able to express in the continuous trading markets. So at the end of the day, we got a picture like this. Now, essentially, what the US legislature gave FERC was, what we want you to do is make sure the prices are just and reasonable, which means that basically all the stakeholders get to pick their favorites and lobby for it, and lobby to the judge that this X is just and reasonable and the others aren't. And therein lies the problem. So there's this huge food fight among the stakeholders about what X should be. By contrast, the Texas rule is, and I'm not that fond of Texas, quite frankly, the governor passed a law firing me. So after the storm, for political reasons, of course. The first thing you do is, when a crisis happens, is you throw somebody under the bus. And the first thing they did is, oh, there's some non-Texans on the board, throw them under the bus. And so I was gone. But the Texas market at the time was the best market in the world, probably, argued among, and I'm probably biased, but that's pretty much what folks will tell you. So in any event, what the Texas law was saying, you got to provide electricity at least cost. Well, there's only one solution here, and that is you take the derivative, you represent total welfare, you take the derivative, set equal to 0, and X equals 0, right? This is why any of your children over 5 can understand this. I mean, maybe if they're 3, I don't know. I don't actually know how early you learn quadratics, but these days, but it's, it's pretty, I mean, you can tell them, you can say, okay, here's an optimization problem. Can you solve it? And I bet they could do it. I'm just guessing. So that's basically the complexity. And now let's move into a few details. It's more complicated than page up and page down should work. Okay, so I built a whole company starting January 2nd, which is basically a team of economists, computer scientists, operations researchers, applied math guys, a lawyer, and others, some of whom have Nobel Prizes. And it's amazing. And so we basically are building this whole system, a commercial platform to implement all this. And we're giving it away as open access and open source code. So it's free to everyone, every sector, every country in the world, absolutely free. Because our interest isn't in making money. Our interest is in promoting good ideas. We want to have a positive impact in the world, just like you want to have a positive impact in the world. That's why you're working for the Bank of Thailand as opposed to Wall Street, right? You all could get jobs at Wall Street and get paid 4 times more. I mean, probably 10 times more than what you're making here at the Bank of Thailand. But so I think you can appreciate this. So anyway, next slide. And our website, forwardmarketdesign.com, will provide lots of materials. Also my website, cramton.umd.edu. Next slide. And so I've already described the market design approach. It's super simple. You start with what's the goal? And my favorite goal, you shouldn't be surprised, is maximize social welfare, subject to constraints. And then what are the potential market failures? Address the potential market failures. I mentioned, well, prisoner's dilemma, that's actually the arms race for speed, is a prisoner's dilemma. Everybody, we'd like to agree not to engage in the race, but everybody has an individual incentive to be faster than the other. So that's a prisoner's dilemma. incomplete markets, Henry problem, the fact that all the trading is going through one market and we don't have the rich granularity in time and space that we need. Market power is the problem of the duopolist and the mobile broadband market, and then adverse selection and moral hazard are because of the incomplete information, the uncertainty, and the fact that people have private information. Okay, so there's hidden information, and that's all true. Next slide. So what our long run objective is to get this stuff implemented. The way we're going to do that immediately is to demonstrate how powerful the technology is. And this applies to every country. And I'm not just talking about market-based economies that use price to allocate resources. It applies equally to China and Russia. How's that? Well, you know, basically the principles we're talking about are the same. You know, they've got maximized social welfare that they would like to be doing. Some of them would like to be doing, but they have a hard time doing that because, of course, there's lots of special interests, just like in the rest of the world. And so what the Soviet Union got wrong was they basically did this optimization, but they optimized the wrong thing. They didn't optimize total welfare. They optimized something else, and then it was all command and control. But the problem was the wrong objective. And what China does so much better than Russia did, or the Soviet Union did, is China sort of understands that the objective matters. They have to have a forward-looking good objective, and you do have to use prices. The price is the best, typically the best. You use some amount of command and control, and you say, no, we're just going to build this stuff. And but the way you build it is to have a competitive auction to get the procurement to build the thing, right? So that's what they do. So it's some combination of planning, command control, but price plays a very important role in the Chinese economy. And so everything I say, it applies irrespective of where you are between, you know, total command and control and total price, price-based economy. Okay, so what we're doing is we're looking at the electricity market first because the data is so wonderful. So we've got 12 years of data, very detailed data at the nodal level which is substation in Texas. And we can use that data and the evolution of its resource structure, its dynamics in terms of weather and everything else in order to evaluate, well, you know, how does this market perform? How can the market participants participate in it? And we're actually modeling all the market participants with utility functions that have, you know, they're carrier utility functions. So that's a limitation, but it's perfectly fine. That's what everybody else does. And so and then we're having them optimize, which is perfectly appropriate in a wholesale market. That's what these guys do. So I'm going to have another month or two. I'll have all the results and they'll all be open access, so you can take a look. Next slide. So the most important thing in these commodity markets that have time and location elements like electricity, communication, and transportation, or water, or you know, pretty much any gas, anything else, is compute resources, is the spot market. You know, effectively, the spot market is the foundation for everything else. And you basically, you want a spot market, and then you want to trade derivatives. You want to be able to trade the spot product, and you want to trade all derivatives of the spot product. And you want to be able to trade them transparently and efficiently. And then you'll have an efficient market that will have the rich granularity in time and space, so you don't have incomplete markets. It will have it will address market power. How does it address market power? By letting market participants do what comes naturally, which is what every trader does, which is try to reduce the adverse price impact of their orders. They start at a particular position, they want to move to their ideal position, and they adapt their strategy, trade to target, in order to minimize their trading costs. and they establish arbitrage. They take arbitrage positions, moving away from their ideal path in response to buy low, sell high incentives. Yes. Yes, good question. Yeah, yeah. Right. So practically what we need is hourly. So basically we have a product. So there's the energy product that's what the consumer ultimately is interested in, is energy in real time. And so energy is the real-time product, and its time and location granularity is every hour at every location. And a location is the delivery location. And for the wholesale market, it's nodal. So there's 6,000 nodes in Texas. In PGM, there's 12,000. In ISO New England, it's 5,000. But it's every substation. So those things with all the wires that your boys are looking at and like, oh, that's really cool. So that's the granularity that today we need, is hourly. And all the spot market, so I should say the spot market actually in these markets, it started at hourly, and now it's at 5 minutes in the best markets, because as you get closer to real time, you need finer granularity in both time and location. And so what happens is day ahead is still hourly in all the markets in the world, and it is becomes either 15-minute products, 10-minute products, or 5-minute products about 2 hours before real time. So that's what you need. So it's totally manageable. It's not like, I didn't say 100 billion products. I said, it's about 1 million. So and 1 million is no problem. Yes. Oh yeah, no, the spot market you always have to have, because the spot market is what enables efficient settlement. So you need efficient, because all the markets settle by efficient performance. What's efficient performance? It means that basically, if you do, you differ by something other than the forward, then you will buy, like let's say you were supposed to sell and you don't have the goods to sell, then you are a buyer in the real-time market. So the real-time market is absolutely essential, because there's always going to be deviations because of the uncertainty. And so that's how you resolve it. So all these markets have a physical real-time market. It's only the market becomes physical at real time. That's it. That last 5 minutes. Yes, exactly. Yes. And what the way it works is the same in all the markets, is basically as you move farther away from real time, the incentives to trade are diminishing exponentially. The concerns about the risk exposure from the different location is diminishing. And so what happens is when you structure the products optimally, you start with like 10 years out, it might be yearly energy forwards. So you're doing tons of aggregation. And then 5 years out, they become monthly. And then 1 year out, they become daily. And then 6 months out, they become hourly. And then 2 hours out, they become 5 minutes. And then as technology improves, we can take that 5 minutes and make it into 1 minute. But you don't, the nonsense in finance. So, basically right now, everything is sub millisecond, right? In finance. And all that, the finance guys point to it as like, oh, wow, isn't it cool? We were able to trade so quickly, get that information in the market really quickly. Well, what is the price of Google supposed to do? The price of Google is supposed to be about informing the capital decisions of Google and the Google investors. That's what it's supposed to be. Those decisions are not made on a millisecond basis. So hourly would be just fine for finance. But, Pete Kyle tells me, no, Peter, all these markets would crop up if you did hourly. And so unless you pass laws against them and you could, enforce it. So you have to do something faster than that. And he says, yeah, probably, he's an expert for sure. He says 10 seconds. 10 seconds would do the job. But what we say in our paper, Flow Trading, is, and in the earlier paper with Eric, is 1 second. Well, let's implement 1 second. Now we'll give you guys the benefit of the doubt and do 1 second. And my laptop can clear all the securities in the world in less than a second. So this is not a big problem. Whereas all the exchanges, they've got massive rooms of servers and all this nonsense. And it's all because for co-location. It has nothing to do with computation of anything. They don't do computation. They sort numbers. That's what they do. They sort numbers. Which is the biggest number? Which is the next biggest number? And actually, they aren't interested in the next biggest number. They're only interested in the biggest number and the second biggest. Because, and then they're doing a comparison. And then one's setting the price and one's on the side, on depending on which direction it is. So that's all they care about. And yes, your 5-year-old knows algorithms to find the biggest number and the second number. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, this is just showing the variation in prices, and there's lots of it. Next slide. We're going to be able to go through slides really fast now. So more variation. Next slide. This is the merit order curve, and this is the margin, the setting. It's extremely competitive. This is the different resource types. Next slide. So spot market model is basically our spot market, because the US market has a day ahead market and a real-time market. The day ahead market is the hedge of the real-time market. So that's for scheduling the resources. And we need that because of the startup cost. It might cost $100,000 to start up a big combined cycle unit. So that's a big non-convexity that you have to have in the existing world. And so that's actually kind of nice. So when we're talking about spot, I actually mean day ahead. So that's actually easier. But everything that's forward of day ahead, we eliminate all the complexity because there's no need for us to model the network and resource constraints, because they're implicitly embedded in the price expectations, right? If you think there's going to be congestion and the price in this part of Bangkok is going to be twice as high as another place, that price difference is reflected in your forward net demand curve for that product. So that's why. So that's like the magic trick that removes us from all complexity. So essentially, what I'm talking about is we have a convex optimization problem by assumption of the way we're accommodating bid expression, by requiring that the bidders express their bids through piecewise linear net demand curves. And the only constraint we're making, they can express anything that can be represented in million-dimensional space that is monotonic. Monotonic demand curves. That's all. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay, so you need more than just forwards. You need options. And why do you need options? Think about it. So you're an electricity supplier. You've got 1 million Bangkok customers that you're supplying electricity to. You know what their shape looks like. You've dealt with them for years and years, and so you have a pretty good idea on how their load shape varies with weather and so on. But you know also that this gigawatt combined cycle unit could go down and would have a huge effect on the price. You know that a cold snap might come in. I don't know if you've ever had a cold snap here in Bangkok, but you know, bad weather can come in and have a huge effect on the price. So the price could move orders of magnitude. And that movement can also affect not just the price, but also the quantity demanded. So that's what happened in Texas. You have a cold snap in Texas, everybody turns their heater up full blast. Most of the heat in Texas is electric. And the electric heat, you might think, oh, great, it's efficient heat pumps, but it's not. They have heat pumps that are designed for Texas, which means they just turn into toasters at low temperatures. It's just resistive heat. So it couldn't be worse. And so they, you know, because it's like it can consume, resistive heat can consume, you know, arbitrary amounts of electricity, right? Whereas your air conditioners, you know, I've noticed this in Bangkok, my hotel room, actually the entire hotel, the temperature fluctuates. Why does it fluctuate? You know, it's hot in the after at 2, 3 o'clock. You've all been in these places. It's hot at 2 and 3 o'clock because the air conditioner is working at 100% and there's so much solar heat coming in that it can't keep up. And so air conditioners naturally have a limit. And so basically electricity demand is capped. So what's really bad is not summer, but winter. Winter is really bad because then if it's super cold, you're using all this resist heating and the consumption of electricity for resistive heat is infinite. You know, because you can do things like plug in your toaster and turn that on. Well, that's not enough. So then you know you fire up your stove full blast and you know open the oven and you know you got you're desperate. It's freezing. So it's you know it's just consuming all this energy. So here that you just have the heat and it makes your electricity situation much better because basically it just caps out. You know, when it gets super hot, every air conditioner in Bangkok is going to be at 100%, period, all the time, 24/7. And that, so the guy knows that, you know, your demand goes like this. It goes up, blah, 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 and then it's just a flat liner. So that's really great. But we don't have that in Texas. And so we need the options. Why do we need the options? Because of the quantity risk. So the trade to target strategy is going to be to buy your expected need in energy, okay, based upon your best estimates of what you're going to need, but then you buy the right tail in options. So that because if you bought it in energy, then you'd be going to the real-time market selling energy all the time. If you covered your right tail with energy. So you cover your right tail with options, which is energy if the strike price, if you're above the strike price, and the strike price is high, like $1,000. Normally the electricity price is $25. So when you get to $1,000 price, so it's not going to kick on very often. And this is one other reason why electricity is so much more complicated than finance. In finance, you have prices that are normally distributed or log normally distributed. No, I'd say they're probably log normally distributed. They never go negative. In electricity, we have sort of this dual system where we have the normal times, which is log normally distributed, but much higher variance than any financial market. And then we have the near shortage situation. And near shortage, it's also log normally distributed, but it's way out there. So the distribution, when you plot it, looks like a log normal, you know, with a lot of mass in the right tail, and then it goes along, and then another spike of magnitude away. So it's this dual peak situation. Okay, and so we have to model that and work with that, and then we do, and it's like there's very nice regime switching models that is what we use, and it's very nice. Next slide. And I know I'm out of time, probably a half hour ago, but so anyway, you need to, you know, just tell me when to stop, but I'll go very quickly just to show you that, you know, even when you have millions of prices, you know, here I've got hundreds of prices, it's not that complicated. Next slide. Okay, this is talking about risk. This is really fascinating stuff, but I don't have time to go through it because we're looking at different risk profiles and how it changes things. Next. Oh, it's slow. Okay, keep going. Keep going. This is actually representing the whole surface. That's fine. We can just keep going. It was that, effectively you got this million dimensional surface of preferences, and it's pretty interesting. But here's the trade to target strategy. It's just going to be this linear curve. Next. Next. We can keep going for a while. There's this main loop in the opposite. Okay, wait. Okay, governance. Let me just say a couple things. I've already said that. Centralized versus decentralized. So lots of people say, Peter, you like markets. You need to get rid of all these regulations. We want to just let the market rip. That's what we do in the gas market, which basically is there is no regulation in the gas market. It's almost completely unregulated. There's no transparency of price or quantity, and it's a mess. And it's got all these problems. It works okay because gas, unlike electricity, can store more readily. But in a crisis, it's a total disaster. And that's why the gas problems were why we had the crisis in Texas. That was the proximate cause of the disaster, that the combined cycle units could not get gas. They did not have fuel. If you do not have fuel, they had backup fuel, and they used their backup fuel, and they ran out of their backup fuel. And there was not transportation because the roads were all messed up because they don't have plowing equipment. My point is, first of all, there is no market that is let the market rip. Perfect competition works beautifully without any regulation. Every market is regulated to some extent. That is, at least you have contract law, right? You've got the ability to sign enforceable contracts. Okay, so that's regulation. In electricity, we have extensive regulation. But actually, when we do the regulation right, the regulations can be short and essentially encode the maximize social welfare subject to constraints, period. So very straightforward. So I raise this because a lot of the we don't like Peter people say that, oh, he's just pushing for some other centralized thing. He's got, like in our beautiful United States, we've got these exchanges compete with each other. And what you want is decentralized decision-making by billions of decision makers, but you want central clearing. Central clearing is important, it's valuable, and it's costless. So I want to make that distinction. Next. I'm almost done. Next. It is really slow. Okay, this is what prices look like in the United States, but we can go on. That's the nodal prices. There's hundreds of thousands of points here. But the big point here is, despite all this nodal price, because in Europe, what they say is, oh, we can't do nodal pricing because it's too scary. There's too many prices. You remember the emperor when Mozart asked, how did you like it? And when he went to the opera for 3.5 hours, and the emperor said, let's see, too many notes. That's it, too many notes. Well, guess what? It's not a problem. Mozart responded by saying, there were exactly as many notes as necessary, Your Highness. And I say the same thing. There are exactly as many prices as necessary, Your Highness. And it makes no difference whether it's 1 million or 10 or 1. People can handle it. It's not a problem. We have spreadsheets. We can manage risk. And what this picture shows is that the risk is that the congestion is it's not persistent. It's intermittent. It depends on things like these outages and weather changes and particular locational things. And so actually a consumer's monthly bill is sort of, even if they're priced based on their particular location, their annual bill is just as volatile as anybody else's. Next. Okay, there's a process to go through. First thing is measurement. You have to measure use. If you don't measure use by time and location, you can't price by time and location. So Germany has 0 smart meters. It's pretty amazing, right? In this day and age, no, Germany, one of the most sophisticated countries in the world, has 0 smart meters. The center of science until World War II. 0 smart meters. They cannot measure use. They couldn't implement this. Install the smart meters and then use the smart meters to charge efficient prices by time and location and give the participants the ability to hedge the locational risk, which is what an innovative service provider would do. They would offer a rate plan that bought energy and energy options on behalf of the consumer, all without the consumers knowing, that represented their load shape and variation, and then they could offer the best deal to the consumer on a monthly basis, and that's what competition brings. And so this is the path to efficient markets. Now, let's just jump to the very end. So if you do Control End, I think it'll jump to the very end. That was a BMW, very nice. There's the math. There's how the difficulty is going up linearly. There's the transition to, well, it's okay. Okay, good. We're doing the detailed market simulation. Now, last slide, next slide. Okay, if you could make it big, because this is my favorite guy. So essentially, the world is in a race. And this one, you can just click on this guy. Sorry. Okay, so you know Usain Bolt, and you remember the Olympics when you know he's like coasting, and he's beating everybody by meters. You know, that's what we want. Yeah, and you'll also notice 3 Jamaicans in that race. So the Jamaicans are really good at running fast. You also notice that if they let me run in this race, I would be the fastest white guy in the race, which is kind of interesting. You could be the fastest Thai guy in the race. But in any event, the point is these guys are blazingly fast. We need to be blazingly fast on the regulatory side. If you told me, Peter, we like these ideas. We'd like to implement some of these ideas in some of our sectors in the Thai economy because we want a path to prosperity. And that's what the folks at the ERC and NBDC are telling me. And, you know, maybe not all of them, but that's the staff guys are telling me this. So I mean, the higher you go up, the more they say, well, there's politics we have to deal with. So I definitely experience that in every country. So the point is that we have the technology, it's all implemented, the price is right, it's free, it can be implemented in 2 months, no problem. Customized to your country, to your sector, whatever it is. That's about what it would take. To design the products, as you pointed out, the products are super important to get that. So, but we have tons of experience with complicated products and, you know, very good intuitions. I've worked in virtually every sector, and my team has as well. The constraint is the tyranny of the status quo, and that's the constraint everywhere. Whoops, I keep hitting that button, but it doesn't do any damage. Good. And where do you see it is in process, the stakeholder process that determines the rules. So you need to, you know, work the politicians, work the legislature, work agencies in order to tear down some of those barriers that are erected, just like Taylor said, benefit of those being regulated, not for the benefit of the Thai people. And so just keep explaining, you know, we want to do this for the Thai people. Don't we? Won't we be better off? And you know, talking to the guy that's getting huge fall, then the answer is going to be no. But the fact is, there's few oligarchs out there. We're sort of really big into making oligarchs now in the United States, I guess. But it's a disaster, and you know it's a disaster. And so, you know, use the press, use your voice. You've got a fantastic voice here at the Bank of Thailand because you are the agencies. You are the most respected as being independent and representing the greater good, at least impression. So go for it. So I'll leave you with that. But I'm certainly happy to entertain any questions. I am, I'm all ears, and I apologize for the late start and for running long. So thank you for your patience. And if folks have to go, please just, you know, go. And if you would like to ask a question, that's fine too.
All right. Is there any question among the attendees?
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So excellent question. I have very strong views on that. I think finance is embarrassing. I think it's, and I know that many of you have PhDs in finance, probably you did research in market microstructure or other areas. And so I apologize in advance, but, and this is here where I totally agree with Pete Kyle, who's probably the father of market microstructure. You wrote the greatest paper in the 20th century in market microstructure. I don't think there's any question about that. So Pete tells me, he's my colleague at the University of Maryland, I completely agree with him that the stuff they do is ridiculous. So, and it's really outrageous. So I just actually, this morning, our paper, Flow Trading, which is going to be the highest impact paper in market microstructure in the 21st century. Okay, you heard it from me. I might sound like an arrogant, and maybe I am, but read the paper and think about this stuff, and then look at the market microstructure literature. The bar is not that high. I mean, they are looking at like, what would happen if we changed the price tick from 1/4 to 1/8? You know, it's things like that. It's like, well, that's a fascinating question. Or let's do an event study on this. You know, it's like, and so I submit. So Eric submitted the paper to this DC conference, which is a policy conference held every year at the SEC. It's like the most, you know, it's the biggest thing, and the focus is on mostly it's on market microstructure because that's a big interest of the SEC. And you know, we were rejected again the third time. So, in my paper with Eric that got published in QJ and has over 1,400 citations, I think at this point, it just came out in 2015. That paper was rejected 3 times in a row by the market microstructure NBR working group. And you know, it was interesting. In the last year, the third time, after it was rejected the third time, Eric and I both went to the NBR market microstructure, and every paper was presented was talking about our paper. So, you know, my views are a little tainted by the experience, but I think actually in almost every profession, people need to step back and say, what are we doing? Why don't we, you know, what's the first best? Let's think about this from if we're like an engineer designing a market, what should we do? And it wouldn't be, oh, I've got a great idea. Let's change the price tick from 1/4 to 1/8. You know, it's going to be things like prompt, where you'd say, you know, let's have millisecond transactions with zero transaction fee. Okay, that's what that's the way a market designer thinks. And so that's what they should be doing. And people should be writing papers about prompt. They shouldn't be writing papers about different price ticks. But I'm rather opinionated on these things.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor.